Hello, this is Chapter 3 of The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. Welcome to Dictionopolis. You must excuse my gruff conduct, the watchdog said, after they'd been driving for some time. But you see, it's traditional for watchdogs to be ferocious. Milo was so relieved after having escaped the doldrums that he assured the dog that he bore him no ill will, and in fact was very grateful for the assistance. "Splendid!" shouted the watchdog. "I'm very pleased. I'm sure we'll be great friends for the rest of the trip. You may call me Talk." That is a strange name for a dog who goes tick, all day. Said Milo. "Why don't they call you Don't say it?" And Milo could see a tear well up in his eye. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings," said Milo, not meaning to hurt his feelings. "It's all right," said the dog, getting a hold of himself. "It's an old story, and a sad one, but I can tell it to you now. When my brother was born, the first pup in the family, my parents were overjoyed and immediately named him Tick in expectation of the sound they were sure he would make. On first winding him, that they discovered, to their horror, that instead of going, he went. They rushed to the Hall of Records to change his name, but too late. They had already officially been inscribed, and nothing could be done. When I arrived, they were determined not to make the same mistake twice, and since it seems logical that all their children would make the same sound, they named me Talk. Of course, you know the rest. My brother is called Tick because he goes, and I am called Talk because I go. And both of us are forever burdened with the wrong names. Our parents were so overwrought that they gave up having any more children and devoted their lives to doing good work among the poor and hungry. But how did you become a watchdog?" interjected Milo, hoping to change the subject, as Talk was sobbing quite loudly now. "That," he said, rubbing a paw in his eye, "is also traditional. My family have always been watchdogs, from father to son, almost since time began. You see," beginning to feel a bit better, "once there was no time at all, and people found it very inconvenient. They never knew whether they were eating lunch or dinner, and they always were missing their trains. So time was invented to help them keep track of their day and get, places when they should. When they began to count all the time that was available, what with, 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour and 24 hours in a day and 365 days in a year, it seemed as if there was much more time than could ever be used. If there's so much of it, it couldn't be very valuable," was the general opinion, and soon it fell into disrepute. People wasted it, even gave it away. Then we were given the job of seeing that no one wasted time again," he said, sitting up proudly. "It's hard work, but a noble calling, for you see," he was now standing on his seat, one foot on the windshield, shouting with his arms outstretched, "It is our most valuable possession, more precious than diamonds. It marches on, it untied, wait for no man." And at that point, in the speech, the car hit a bump, and in the road, and the watchdog collapsed in a heap in the front seat with his arm ringing again furiously. "Are you all right?" grunted Talk. "Sorry to get carried away, but I think you get the point." As they drove along, Talk continued to explain the importance of time, quoting the old philosophers and poets and illustrating each point with gestures that brought him perilously close to tumbling headlong from the speeding automobile yet again. Before long, they saw in the distance the towers and flags of Dictionopolis, sparkling in the sunshine, and in a few moments they reached the Great Wall and stood at the gateway to the city. Roared the gate man, clearing his throat and snapping smartly to attention. "This is Dictionopolis, a happy kingdom, advantageously located in the foothills of confusion and caressed by gentle breezes from the sea of knowledge. Today, by royal proclamation, it is market day. Have you come to buy or sell?" I beg your pardon?" said Milo. "Buy or sell! Buy or sell!" repeated the gate man impatiently. "Which is it? You must have come here for some reason." Milo began. "Come now! If you don't have a reason, you must at least have an explanation, or certainly give some excuse," interrupted the gate man. Milo shook his head. "Very serious, the gate man said, shaking his head also. "You can't get in without a reason." He thought for a moment, and then continued. Wait a minute. Maybe I have an old one that you can use." He took a battered suitcase from the gatehouse and began to rummage busily through it, mumbling to himself. No, this won't do. No. This is fine. He cried triumphantly, holding up a small medallion on a chain. He dusted it off, and engraved on one side were the words, "Why not?" "That's a good reason for almost anything." A bit used, perhaps, but still quite serviceable. And with that, he placed it around Milo's neck and pushed back the heavy iron gate, bowed low, and ushered them in to the city. "I wonder what the market will be like," thought Milo as he drove through the gate. But before there was even time for an answer, they had driven into an immense square, crowded with long lines of stalls heaped with merchandise, decorated in gay-colored bunting. Overhead, a large banner exclaimed, "Welcome to the Word Market!" And from across the square, 5 very tall, thin gentlemen, regally dressed in silks and satins and plumed hats and buckled shoes, rushed up to the car, stopped short, mopped 5 brows, caught 5 breaths, unrolled 5 parchments, and began talking to him. "Greetings, salutations, welcome, good afternoon, hello!" Milo nodded his head, and they went on, reading from their scrolls. "By the order of Azaz the Unabridged, King of Dictionopolis, Monarch of Letters, Emperor of Phrases, Sentences, and Miscellaneous Figures of Speech, we offer you the hospitality of our kingdom, country, nation, state, commonwealth, realm, empire, palatinate, Do all those words mean the same thing? Gasped Milo. Of course! Certainly! Precisely! Exactly! Yes! They replied. In order. Well then, said Milo, not understanding why each one said the same thing in a slightly different way. Wouldn't it be simpler to just use one? It would certainly make more sense. Nonsense! Ridiculous! Fantastic! Absurd! Bosh! They chorused again and continued. We're not interested in making sense. That's not our job, scolded the first. Besides, explained the second, one word is as good as another, so why not use them all? Then you don't have to choose which one is right, advised the third. Besides, sighed the fourth, if one is right, then 10 are 10 times as right. Obviously, you don't know who we are, sneered the fifth. And they presented themselves one by one as the Duke of Definition, the Minister of Meaning, the Earl of Essence, the Count of Connotation, the Secretary, the Undersecretary of Understanding. Milo acknowledged the introduction, and as talk growled softly, the minister explained. We are the king's advisors, or, in more formal terms, his cabinet. Cabinet, recited the Duke, a small private room or closet, case with drawers, etc., for keeping valuables or displaying curiosities. 2, council room for chief ministers of state. 3, a body of official advisors to the chief executive of a nation. You see, continued the minister, bowing thankfully to the Duke, Dictionopolis is the place where all the words in the world come from. They're grown right here in our orchards. I didn't know that words grew on trees, said Milo timidly. Where did you think they grew? Shouted the Earl irritably. A small crowd began to gather to see the small boy who didn't know that words grew on trees. I didn't know they grew at all, admitted Milo, even more timidly. Several people shook their heads sadly. Well, money doesn't grow on trees, does it? Demanded the Count. I've heard not, said Milo. Then something must. Why not words? Exclaimed the Undersecretary triumphantly. The crowd cheered his display of logic and continued about its business. To continue, continued the minister impatiently. Once a week, a royal proclamation, the word market is held here in the great square, and people come from everywhere to buy the words they need or trade in the words they haven't used. Our job, said the Count, is to see that the words sold are proper ones, for it wouldn't do to sell someone a word that has no meaning or didn't exist at all. For instance, if you bought a word like gabberstick, where would you use it? It would be difficult, thought Milo, but there were so many words that were difficult that he hardly knew how to use any of them. But we never choose which ones to use, explained the Earl, as they walked towards the market stalls. For as long as they mean what they mean, to mean we don't care if they make sense or nonsense, innocence or magnificence, reticence or common sense, added the Count and the Undersecretary. That seems simple enough, said Milo, trying to be polite. Easy as falling off a log, cried the Earl, falling off a log with a loud thump. Must you be so clumsy? Shouted the Duke. All I said was, began the Earl, rubbing his head. We heard you, said the minister angrily, and you'll have to find an expression that's less dangerous. The Earl dusted himself off as the others snickered. audibly. "You see," cautioned the Count, "you must pick your words very carefully, and be sure to say just what you intend to say. And now we must leave to make preparations for the royal banquet." "You'll be there, of course," said the minister. But before Milo had a chance to say anything, they were rushing off the square as quickly as they'd come. "Enjoy yourself at the market," shouted back the undersecretary. "Market," recited the Duke. "An open space, a covered building, in which..." And that was the last Milo heard as they disappeared into the bustling crowd. I never knew words could be so confusing, Milo said, as he bent down to scratch the dog's ear. "Only when you use a lot to say a little," answered Talk. Milo thought this was quite the wisest thing he'd heard all day. "Come, let's see the market. It looks quite exciting,"